It all started with an old teak table, and then we found a new teak table before I started a side hustle by inventing a new version of the cup game. I've been digging through my storage and I found an old coffee table. I was about to throw it away, but instead I've taken the top and it appears to be veneered over the top, but fairly solid wood. And I'm pretty certain that's not ply and that's a solid piece of wood. It's fairly robust, but I've always wanted to make a better table for Friday night, and I figured this could be the beast and the thing that I use to make our new table. And like any good boat DIYer, I'm not using a steel rule because I forgot to bring it with me. I'm just using a good old parallel rule and a plotter. Here I've marked the table up. I've taken about 6.5 inches off each of the wings. The reason I want to take it off each end is because the table has a natural curve. So if I cut this straight across and then round these edges off, I think that'll make a really good tabletop. If I've got this right, because I've drawn around where the edges of the seats are, we'll be able to drop this in and make this into some sort of infill. My plan is to cut this first, bring it back to the boat and see what I need to do. But if it doesn't fit in the infills, that's no big deal. But with a couple of short table legs, it shouldn't necessarily need to fit into the ledges at the edges anyway. Just need to support the cushions. So time to take it home and get busy with the saw and the sander. So I'm having a look at the lines that I scribed down here. I initially put a line here and a line here, and I need to move them over a little bit. And what I want to do is take an equal amount of wood off the end of each piece of the table here. I'm also a bit worried about the thickness of this, because the only thing I've got to cut this really is a jigsaw, and this has got to reach the bottom of the cut, and it is only just reaching that blade is only just reaching, so it may not get there. I have got a disc saw, a circular saw, however it cuts really roughly and I want to try and get this as good as possible. So the first thing to do is get the faithful Sharpie out and mark this up correctly, and make sure that we mark it up with the same amount to come off at each end of the table. So that's my next job. Do you know what? This wood must be 50, 60 years old, and the smell as I'm cutting it is unbelievable. It smells like an old house. It's unreal. It's a lovely smell, but it's really familiar, and I don't know why. Well, that's sad to see. It's not solid wood. It's like a older version of very high density MDF or fiberboard. However, it is workable, and I think I'll be able to get quite a nice edge on that. And by the time we put some colour on it, that won't necessarily notice. I think we can sand that out. Not a bad cut. as jigsaw cuts go. A little bit of a wobble at the end there, but nothing that we can't take out. And then just to compare with the other end, looks like we've measured this correctly, but yeah, one end's gone. Looking at this cut now, it isn't so straight, so I've got a bit of work to do, and I'm going to carefully just plane this over and then start sanding this and see if we can get some sort of sanded finish on this edge here. Let's see how that comes out, shall we? Let's have a look and see how we're doing with the sanding. That's I think if we can keep this laminate here and stain it, I think it'll be okay. I kind of want it this teaky colour, really. So yeah, I think we can do this. I think we can do this with this tabletop. All is not lost. Yay! I've sanded this off and taken off that awful 1970s colour, and I quite like the colour that it's come out. Just for comparison, that's where we started, and I never imagined I was going to get a finish quite like this. Okay, having sanded this down, I'm really pleased how this has come up. It's got a good solid single colour all over, so I'm just wiping it down to get as much of this dust back out of it as possible, and then I'm going to have a go at staining it. Now, to stain it, I think you don't really need to do very much. On the tin it basically says it's a wood dye, and all you have to do is to bare untreated wood, which it is, remove all previous coatings, which we've done, shake well for about a minute, and tip a small amount of dye onto a cloth or a small piece of sponge and apply in the direction of the grain. So always moving, there we go, always moving. Whilst I'm trying to decide exactly what I'm going to do with the tabletop, you'll notice that I've actually masked up around the edge here. This is the underside of the table. I've got some marine white gloss from when I refurbished a rib not so long ago, and I'm just going to give the bottom of the table a coat, because this is going to be in a marine environment, and so it will need sealing somehow. It's the underside of the table coated, and not perfect, but pretty good. There's a bit of reaction there. Where it's reacted, I'll just rub it down again and give it another coat later on. But yeah. Today with the table, I'm going to be fitting the legs. Now, I got a pair of these. They're like RV camper table tops, £13 for a pair, and I wanted to make sure that these are the right size to fit onto the poles that we have. and they are. So now I need to mark out on the table where these need to go, and so to do that, what I specifically want to do is make sure that the table lines up in exactly the right place. So this is how I'm going to do it. That's approximate, but what I'm going to do is drop a plumb line down on each side to get it horizontally in the right place as well. When I fit these underneath, I want them to be on permanently, but I think that's roughly where they're going to go, and it's roughly in the middle of the table as well, so that's a pretty good placement, and that's going to be a fairly good height for a table. Hopefully it's not sticking out too much, and it's the right size table really. I decided to sense check myself from where I'd laid these out, and they didn't look quite right, so I measured kind of that centre of the table, and I've drawn 2 new rings around these. These are slightly offset still, but that reflects how the legs are underneath. What I'm going to do is just replace these hats on here, because once I start drilling holes I don't really want to be filling them in again. So I'm gonna, as you can see, they're very slightly offset and the legs do have a bit of flexing, but the shorter ones are not going to have that. So there's a very slight offset on there, and the whole of the seating area is slightly offset. So what I'm going to do is pop these back on, line them up from where the new holes are, and have a look at where the table is in relation to the seating. So just going to get myself underneath. There, so that's the hat position. So you can see they're slightly offset on the S34, but I reckon that's a pretty good place. I think the placement is pretty much as good as you're going to get, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to draw a circle around each of these, put a couple of marks where the drill holes are, and then we'll flip the table over and fit these hats permanently. After fitting the bases back on, that was basically it. I still haven't had a chance to decide how I'm going to finish the surface of the table, but for now I've given it another quick brush of teak oil and we have a new teak effect table. If you've enjoyed this episode, this is the first of the upgrade videos that we've done on the boat, and there's more to come, so please hang around, like and subscribe, please comment, and let's see if we can upcycle some other bits and pieces of furniture to make Friday night better. See you soon now.